guys, welcome back to our channel. If you're not subscribed, make sure to hit the subscribe button. We post weekly updates of our van builds. This week we worked on installing the interior framing of our van, and we're really excited to show you the results.
For the materials of our interior framing, we used 1x4s along the walls. We ended up using 8 of them, and we used 1x2s along the ceiling, and we used 6 of those. In order to get the 1x2s to conform to the shape of the ceiling, I had to go through and create a bunch of relief cuts into the wood, allowing it to bend into the arc that the ceiling creates. So my number one problem to solve in today is how to get these 1x2s that we're going to use on the ceiling to conform to the ceiling. If you know Sprinter or vans, but Sprinter vans especially, they're curved everywhere. So the ceiling is curved. So if I hold this up, you can see there's a significant gap here. So I want to figure out how many relief cuts I have to make and where I have to make them in this 1x2 in order to get this to conform to the shape of the ceiling. So they go they go 2/3 of the way through the wood. And right now I have 2 spaced an inch either side of center, and then one at 1/4 of the length and the other at like 3/4 of the length. So let's see how the first experiment goes. Went to just kind of trial and push this up on the roof, and a little part of it cracked, so not enough cuts. And then if we push this up here now, you can also see there are big gaps in this area and over here, and same thing on the other side. So we'll make some cuts there and see how much better it does. So I put 4 more cuts in, added 2 more cuts, 12 cuts, 14 cuts. How many do I have now? 1, 2, 3, 18 cuts. Oh no. Okay, so haircut, beard trim, and a few hours later, I'm back in the van. I got my final product here of what we're gonna use for joists on the roof. We got up to 27 cuts in the end. So now that I know what I'm going for, I'm gonna head into the shop, get into production mode to finish the rest of these up. Moment of truth, we're gonna try and just fit all these up here and make sure that they bend properly. Once I was done cutting the 1x2s, I then started work on the 1x4s for the walls. This was a much more straightforward process. Basically involved cutting them to the correct length, then going through and pre-drilling the holes where we would ultimately attach the 1x4s to the interior of the van. And then the final step before priming the 1x4s was to then countersink those pre-drilled holes so that the heads of the bolts wouldn't sit proud of the wood.
And once we painted the 1x2s and 1x4s, we waited about a day for them to dry, and then we started installing them onto the interior.
So we're about to start putting up the interior framing, but first I just want to tape out roughly where our spice rack will be so we don't put a joist right through the middle of where we want that to be. With everything dried, we started to install the 1x4s onto the sides of the van. Our original plan for positioning the 1x4s was to have them in between the metal pillars of the van, but we noticed that the tops of the 1x4s were actually sitting behind the metal pillars. This would prevent us from attaching our final walls to the 1x4s, which is what we want to do. So we had to change the position of the 1x4s to sit on top of those metal pillars instead of in between them. This also meant that we had to add some countersink holes to the 1x4s to make sure that the bolts would be able to contact and bite into the metal ribs of the van.
So I was helping Dan by holding down each of the 1x4s. It takes quite a bit of force installing the screws to get through the sheet metal. Yeah, so I was just helping him hold it down, and then we just went alongside each of the walls. The ceiling wasn't too difficult. A lot of the same thing, just make sure to apply even pressure as you're installing it. Yeah.
With the wall joists installed, we moved on to installing the 1x2s onto the ceiling rib. We used the same wood to metal self-tapping screws as well as the liquid nails adhesive we've used previously. The one thing we had to watch out for in this was how we positioned the screws, because with all of the relief cuts we put into the 1x2s, because if we tried to screw in too close to one of the relief cuts, we were causing cracks in the 1x2. So we just had to be a little strategic with where we were putting the screws to make sure that we weren't cracking the wood.
And then now we'll show you the final product. Thanks for watching this week's video.
If you're not already subscribed, make sure to hit that button and follow along with all of our mistakes. See you next week.